Panagdait sa tanan, and welcome back to our contemporary Philippine arts from the regions class or Humanities 13. I am Sir Justin Romer S. Monteron. You can call me Sir Justin or Sir Romer. For today's lesson, our topic is all about Philippine contemporary arts, and we will be talking about the various contemporary art form as well as the Philippine art history. There are 10 contemporary art forms in our country. But before we go on to each of them, kindly pause the video for 5 seconds and try to guess the different art forms that we have in our country. You may pause the video now. I will assume that you already guessed the different art forms. Let us check the different contemporary art forms of our country, namely practical arts, industrial arts, applied arts, civic arts, commercial arts, graphic art, agricultural art, business art, fishery art, and medical art. Are you familiar with these contemporary art forms? If you are not yet familiar, do not feel pressured because we'll be talking about them individually. Starting with the practical or utilitarian art. From the word itself, utilitarian, meaning to say utility, these are artworks which are intended for use. It is the changing of raw materials for utilitarian purposes, and it also possesses ornaments or artistic qualities to make them useful and beautiful. So aside from being useful, practical art or utilitarian art are also beautiful. The second one is industrial art. Industrial art is the changing of raw materials into some significant products for human. Let us not be confused between industrial arts and practical art. Although they have the same definition coming from raw materials, utilitarian art is more practical than industrial art because utilitarian art serves a purpose for making human life easier, while industrial art is more on decorations. For example, we have shell craft, bamboo crafts, leather crafts, pottery making, so on and so forth. Here we have examples for industrial arts and utilitarian art. Both examples can be considered as industrial art, but only the automobile can be considered as utilitarian. It is because the automobile can serve as a practical way of traveling for humans, while the shellcraft is more on decoration. Going back to the definition of utilitarian art and industrial art, it is mentioned there that it is the changing of raw materials to form a product. Try to pause the video for a minute and identify the raw materials being used in order to produce the automobile in the picture. You may pause the video now. I will assume that you already paused the video. The raw materials that are used in order to create the car are the tires, the paint, the glass, the seat, the light, so on and so forth. Meaning to say, the raw materials refers to all the materials being used in order to create a certain product, such as the automobiles. In this other example for the shellcraft, for obvious reasons, we can say that the raw materials being used in this shellcraft are the shells itself, as well as the glue. It could also be the paint for the eyes in this example. Aside from those examples, we also have letter craft, which can also be considered as an industrial art because for our example here, we have a belt, and a belt can be used for human utility. Bamboo craft can also be considered as an industrial art because in our example, it is used for pots and pottery is more on decoration. For shoemaking, it can also be considered as a practical art because it is used by humans to make their life easier. Pottery making can be more on industrial art because it is used for mere decoration. Remember, class, that we should not be confused with utilitarian art with industrial art because industrial art is a much general term compared to utilitarian art. Not all industrial art can be considered as practical art. Only those artworks that can be used for the aid of human life. The next one is the applied or household art. From the word household, this refers to any artworks that can be seen at our home, such as flower arrangement, interior decoration, dressmaking, so on and so forth. And we also included here cooking. Cooking is a part of household art, anything that we do at our home. For civic art, we have our example here, which is a playground. It includes city or town planning, maintenance, and beautification of parks. It referred to the beautification to improve the standard of living. Civic art refers to the beautification of public places within a city or a town. Commercial arts, from the word commercial itself, it refers to advertisements. In our generation, we usually see commercial arts in social media as well as in television. For our example here, we have a poster indicating a 50% sale or a super discount. It involves business propaganda in the form of advertisement. Aside from a poster, it can also be in a form of a newspaper, a magazine, sign painting, billboard announcements, leaflets, displays, poster designing, movie illustrations, and many more. Graphic art refers to anything that is printed. Agricultural art, from the word agriculture, we are usually associating agriculture with plants. So that is correct because it refers to crop production, horticulture, husbandry, and farming. Note class that agriculture became part of our contemporary art form because aside from being a producer of food in our country, agriculture has also produced lots of art forms such as landscapes. For example, our beautiful rice fields that we can see in any part of the country. For business art, this refers to anything that a businessman do. For business art refers to anything that a businessman do while planning or doing business. It includes merchandising, accounting, bookkeeping, typewriting, so on and so forth. Fishery art. Aside from agriculture, fishery is one of the best food producers in our country. It includes shallow and deep sea fishing, fish refrigeration and culture, net weaving. Fishery became part of our contemporary art forms. It is because of the preparations that we need to do in performing fishing. Medical or clinical art. It includes first aid treatments, medical manufacturing, surgery, medical operation, rehabilitations, and others. If you have seen a person cleaning a wound, you might notice that they are very careful while doing the process because they are trying to follow a certain procedure. In the world of medicine, art can also be performed or applied. It is because they are following a proper protocol to make the dressing of a wound, for example, look neat and clean. Those are the different contemporary art forms. Among the contemporary art forms in the Philippines, which of the following do you think is much suspicious or intriguing? Try to comment them below and share your ideas. For our next lesson, we'll be talking about the Philippine art history. The art history in our country is divided into seven: pre-colonial, Islamic, Spanish, American, Japanese, modern, and contemporary era. Please remember that all we have to talk about in the Philippine art history is the reasons or the different purposes of arts in the different era, starting with pre-colonial. It is also called as ethnic. From the word pre-colonial, meaning to say this is the era before the arrival of the invaders. In this era, arts are for ritual purposes or for everyday use. From the word ritual purposes, it refers to the dances and the songs that the ethnic Filipinos are performing to praise their gods. For everyday uses, it refers to any thing that they do in order to survive, such as making weapons. It also refers to the preparations or apparatus while doing their cooking. Islamic arts, if you have an Islam friend, you might notice when they are wearing their traditional attire, the decorations or the designs of their garments are more on geometric and patterns. Geometric in the sense that it is composed of repeated shapes and that can form patterns. That is the nature of Islamic art, geometric designs and patterns. Islamic art is more on in the Philippine history. Islamic art can be seen more in the island of Mindanao and not very popular in the other islands. In the Spanish era, if we try to look in the Philippine history, the Spaniards came to our country for the 3G reason: God, gold, and glory. By that, in the world of artwork, they incorporate religious artworks such as sculpture of the saints as well as architecture of the church buildings. To sum it up, the contributions of the Spaniards in the world of art in our country are anything that has to do with the Catholic faith. American era, if we compare the American era to the Spanish era in terms of their contribution in artwork, Spanish era focuses on religion, while the American era is more secular. Secular means anything that has nothing to do with religion. In the American regime, commercial and advertising arts were integrated into the fine art curriculum. Moreover, Americans favored idyllic sceneries and secular forms of arts. In the Japanese era, Japanese are actually advocates of culture's preservation of the East Asia. Up until now, some Japanese are very traditional, that they do not accept change in their traditions. During the Japanese era, the Philippine art focuses mainly on the Philippine tradition because again, the Japanese are advocates of cultural preservation. Modern era. It actually started after the World War II, after the Philippines got their independence. In this era, artists and writers focuses on national identity. For being colonized for how many years by other countries, the Philippines is trying to explore their national identity in the world of art. Finally, we have the contemporary art. After the modern art, the Filipinos finally got their identity, and here comes the contemporary art. In this era, artwork is more focused on the expression of people's aspiration for a just, free, and sovereign society, which is exactly the main reason why we can now make different artworks based on our desires as many as we like. To sum it up, those are the different eras in the Philippine art history. Among those eras, which era is your favorite? Comment below your answer and please share your ideas. That's the end of our lesson for today. Do not forget to check your Google Classroom for our lesson package and submit the activities before the deadline. If you have questions or inquiries, you can comment them below or directly contact the teacher. Thank you, class, for coming and listening to me. I do hope that you learned and understand the topic today. Goodbye and God bless.